Good evening, dear viewers from the IAKM and GEMEVI studio. This evening, our live broadcast will be devoted to university students and how university life is during the pandemic. As you're aware, in-person teaching has now moved online and students are having very different experiences because of the lockdown, such as their social life. And as there is uncertainty to when students will be returning back to university, I think it will be useful to reflect on any difficulties university students are facing during this time. So I'm going to introduce my guests before I start. I have Millie Elliott, who is studying a Master's in Strategic Communications at Loughborough University. I have Ollie Jones, who is also studying a Master's at Loughborough University in Social Media and Political Communication. I'm also studying the same course as Ollie. The three of us, we are from the Media and Communication Department at Loughborough University. And I also have Ecem Mimoğlu with us, who is studying medicine at Imperial College London. I believe she is in her 4th year currently. And I'm looking forward to discussing with her how science students are getting on at university. But when we are having our discussion, feel free to be sending in questions that you have. I'll be asking any questions that I receive with the time limit I have. But yes, I'm going to start off with asking you all, hello, I hope you're all well. I'm just going to ask, firstly, can you all say whether you are currently on campus or at home? And obviously, second term has just started and it is online, obviously, due to the current circumstances. How do you feel about this? And do you think that in-person classes will happen at all this academic year? Usually it's ladies first, but as soon as it's the three of us girls and only you, Ollie, I'll start off with you first.
Me? Yeah. So I'm in Loughborough. I'm not on campus. I live in a private halls just off it. So how do I feel about lectures being online? Well, I'm not surprised. That's the first thing. But it's okay. I think I'm used to it now. It's been nearly a year, and the end of my 3rd year was also online, and I've had to sort of get used to it. And it's taken a bit of time, but now I've got my own routine. I've got my own system. I've got my desk set up how I like it. So now I'm sort of ready. Yeah.
Accepted it. Yeah, perfect. Right, Ecem, should we go to you next?
Yeah, so I'm not living on campus because we went into lockdown, as Ollie said, actually in the middle of last year. So I, at that point, decided it was more reasonable to go home and just stay with my family while I had the chance. So I haven't been on campus. I've been living at home. And I think it's been good. As Oliver said, actually, it was quite difficult to adjust at the start because you kind of think, what do I do now? And when we first went into lockdown, I was meant to be in hospitals and working with patients as a medical student. So transitioning from that to working entirely online was quite challenging. But, it's over time, you start to adapt to it and you realize that there are benefits to it and you kind of play to those strengths as much as possible. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And Millie?
So I'm from Loughborough. I've lived here for like 20 years. So I never was sort of living on campus. I've just lived with my family. So yeah, that's me. I'm still here. And in terms of what I think about it being online, like Ollie, it isn't a surprise. And yeah, I am used to it. I do actually think that. Sorry.
Do you think that in-person lessons will happen at all this year? This academic year?
I think that they're going to try their hardest to make it happen.
Yeah.
I know when at the beginning of the year we were having sort of like dual delivery, like some were in person, some were just online. And I do think that the uni we go to actually did that really well. Like I thought they were really thorough with the way that they'd organised it and I think they'd accommodated for everything. Yeah. So I do think they will try and make it happen, but I quite like online learning, so yeah. It wouldn't be the end of the world if it didn't happen.
So I'm going to obviously talk about online learning because I'm sure there are viewers who are interested to hear about how the online sessions kind of go on for students at the moment. I'm just going to ask, would you say the quality of online teaching is as good as in-person teaching in terms of content delivery? Ejim, should we start off with you?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question because I think it does depend on what the content is that you are delivering. Yeah. So as I mentioned, when we first went into lockdown, I was meant to be in hospital with patients, and there's some aspects that got better content coverage wise as we moved online, and some aspects that got worse. So obviously the fact that you're at home and you're not with patients means you can't talk to people and you can't find out what it means to be a patient and what they're experiencing, and you can't kind of learn firsthand from seeing what they're going through. But simultaneously, kind of when you're in hospital, you're with doctors who are usually really busy and they don't really have time to teach you very much about what's going on. So being online instead meant that we had kind of dedicated sessions where we would sit and talk about particular illnesses. And so the amount of content we covered, I would say, dramatically increased actually compared to previous years. So it ended up being to our benefit last year. This year is my Bachelor of Science year. So if I had been in person, I would have been in lectures all year round. I would have been in the lecture hall pretty much every single day.
Science students at the moment, they are actually allowed to go into university. Is that
so
right?
Again, it depends on, for Imperial at least, it depends on what your course is and what you're doing. So because I was just going to be in lecture theatres, they felt that there wasn't any point when we could just do the exact same thing online. So they just moved everything online for my course and for quite a few of the others. But as you said, a lot of the other science students who actually need to be in labs and doing experiments and things like that, they've been invited back to university on campus where they have the equipment that they wouldn't have at home. So it depends on what you're doing, and it depends on whether you need what campus offers you as opposed to being able to do it online, I think.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you very much. Millie, how do you feel about the quality of online teaching? Obviously, with seminar style kind of sessions, it's not really the same online. So what's your opinion on that?
I think lectures, are pretty similar. I'm happy with the quality of the delivery that the lectures are. Mm-hmm. Seminars, like you said, don't really work that well.
Yeah,
it's just hard. It's really hard, and the fact that you don't have to have your camera on, like microphones aren't always on.
Yeah, I'm going to speak about that.
Yeah, it doesn't encourage conversation like it in the same way that it would do if it's in person. And the whole point of a seminar is to hear other people's ideas and bounce off them. But it just doesn't work. It doesn't work online. That's definitely a weakness of online learning for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Ollie, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, so for my undergraduate degree, the one that finished in the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, it was in politics. And the lectures there are very much debate orientated. So the lecturer would basically be helping the debate continue. And online, that really struggles because you can't have a discussion or let alone a debate with someone online because technical difficulties get in the way. As Millie said, people got their cameras off. So that really struggled. But since I've been in Loughborough, I've been surprised. It's been the lectures themselves have actually been pretty good. But as I say, the discussion is always going to struggle.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to ask, are you confident to join online sessions, or more so, do you frequently join discussion in online sessions? Obviously, there's features with online sessions where you can have your mic off, have your camera off, so no one's actually seeing you. How do you feel about using these features? Do you feel like these features kind of makes you a little bit more lazy, or would you say it's not really done that? Millie, should we start off with you?
So I'd say I'm a pretty confident person. Like I'm happy to talk. However, I will say that I don't really talk if it's online. Like if it's in person, I would be so much more inclined to contribute because you get eye contact, the lecturer can look at you. Like I just online, it's probably quite bad, but I really do find myself not doing it. And I think it's because I don't have my camera on. Microphone you can't really have on because you get echoes and feedback if more than one person has it. And I think I do kind of see it as a little bit of an excuse not to.
I think it is kind of easier for students to just put their camera off, especially if it's like a 9 a.m, and they've just got out of bed, it's not like, from my experiences when I join lectures online, it's very rare when everyone has their camera on. I don't think I've had a lecture where everyone has had their camera on. There's always been students that always do have it off. But yeah, Ollie, would you like to say something?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I always try and force myself to put my camera on, just because I know that if it's not on, then I can just sort of, sometimes I go and do my own thing in my little room. But so I try and keep my camera on. But as you say, if no one else does and you're the only person with a camera on, it can be quite an odd experience. So then quite quickly, 5 minutes in, I'll turn the camera off again. So, but yeah, I get your point.
Great. No, thank you for that. Ejem, would you like to say something about that as well?
I think it's very depends on what you're doing and what the point is of the online session, right? So in things like lectures, there's not much point in even having your camera on, really, because everyone's just focused on the lecture and it's not really discussion. So, you know, as previously been said, it doesn't really make a difference whether you've got your camera on or off. And I think, you know, if you're going to lose focus because your camera is off, you probably would have also lost focus in the lecture theatre. I don't really think it makes a big difference. But in terms of seminars and sort of small group debates, I was very lucky this year because I had a very small group of students on my course. So in all, I think we were around 25 people. So we actually ended up knowing each other relatively well. And even if our cameras were off, we all felt very comfortable turning them on whenever we spoke, or kind of pushing ourselves to say something and have an opinion on what we were discussing. The only thing that kind of changed is it becomes very difficult to get a feel of how much you've been talking and whether it's appropriate, if that makes sense. So there were some conversations that we had where I was actually really quite interested in the topic, and I found it something that I would love to keep talking about forever and ever and ever. And so then it becomes really tricky, because obviously in person, when you start talking, you can kind of get a feel of like, all right, everyone stop listening. I can shut up now. Whereas if you're online, you don't really have that kind of feedback. So you kind of get paranoid that you're talking too much, or you're talking too little, or your point wasn't clear, or people weren't listening, or whatever. And you really can't feel the room and tell what's happening. So in that sense, it becomes more challenging to respond confidently to questions or have a discussion comfortably. It's not that you can't do it. It just becomes a little bit more awkward, and it involves a bit more sort of hesitation, I think.
I think I definitely agree with you there. The next question I'm actually going to ask is like, do you think that in-person sessions kind of allow for more of a routine? Because like with me, I always find it so easy to just turn my camera off and, you know, go do my own thing and stuff. But I try to always put it on, so then and put myself in a routine, because, you know, it's so easy to just have your laptop in bed or something when you have the lecture. But I do think that in-person sessions do kind of allow for more of a routine, whereas when you're home and you can just kind of do what you want whenever you want, kind of thing. But yeah, my next question is, do in-person sessions allow for more of a routine, would you say? And how have you been keeping a routine at home? Like, have you struggled with keeping a routine at home, or would you say it's been okay for you? Ollie, would you like to?
Yeah, I've definitely noticed I've had to sort of force myself to make a routine more. So by that I mean I plan my weeks and I write bullet points of what I'm going to do the next day. And that's not something that I used to do, but something that I now have to do. And I don't know why, if that's just because there's a big step up from doing an undergraduate degree to a postgraduate degree. So it might be just that the course is harder and I need to manage my time more. But I think far more likely it is because I'm at home, my bed's just there, I'm on my laptop all day, so I've got access to Netflix and things. So if I don't force myself to have a timetable, I do get easily distracted. So I've had to deliberately force myself to have a routine. Yeah,
no, I get that. And I agree with you there as well. Ejem, would you like to say something?
Yeah, routines at home. It's always a tricky question. I'm kind of inclined to answer both ways. And I think it depends on how you look at it. So if you look at it in terms of, okay, fine, when you have in-person teaching, obviously you need to get out of bed, you need to travel, you need to go, you need to sit down in the session, and then you're done with the session, then you need to leave and you need to go wherever you need to go to. So it becomes very systematic and very obvious what you're doing at what point in time, and, you know, what leads to the next thing very naturally. Whereas when you're online, that kind of disappears, and it's like you can wake up 5 minutes before a session and then you're in front of your laptop and you're working on it, and then it's lunchtime and you're basically only a couple of meters away from where you were during the session, and then you come back. And in that sense, it can be very messy, and it can be very tricky to compartmentalize your work from the rest of your life and sort of say, okay, this is working time, this is uni time, I'm working on important things now. and then say, once I'm done with that, I'll go off and I'll do something else. It's very, very difficult to keep that straight instead of just getting distracted and doing whatever you want to do. But in terms of routine, like involving new things in my day and kind of keeping it fresh, actually, I'd say that I've had more opportunity, and probably that's because I haven't had to travel as much. So normally in London, you would be traveling for pretty much a quarter of your day, regardless of what you're doing. It's going to involve a lot of travel. Not having that has made it just so much easier to do whatever I want to do. I can finish a session online for uni and then 10 minutes later be, in my gym clothes, ready to do a workout or be downstairs cooking something or eating something or whatever it is. So it can be very easy to incorporate other things into your day that you otherwise wouldn't have time for. That's been really helpful because it's meant that, whereas before I would struggle, for example, to exercise regularly because my schedule would be so varied, when everything's online, it becomes very obvious when things are happening and more predictable. For me personally, I found it that way. And it cuts out a lot of unknowns, unknown train times, unknown bus cancellations, unknown all of these things. And you end up having more time to spend on things that you really want to bring into your day. That can help structure it a lot better. So it depends on how you use it, and it really is a sort of process and you have to go through it and learn from it. It took me a long time to realize that just because I have all day to myself doesn't mean I get to just do nothing all day. I can actually do other things. So it's a mixture of your personal motivation and whether there is anything else that you would want to include in your day and whether you can do them during lockdown. It's very varied. I think it's quite an individual thing.
No, I do agree with you there, definitely. Millie, would you like to say something about routine as well, like how you're keeping your routine during the lockdown and whether you think in-person sessions kind of allow for more of a routine or if you've not struggled with that?
Well, alongside my master's, I have a part-time job that I've been doing it for, I was doing it full-time last summer and then I've sort of moved part-time now. I've got the master's. So the days I'm not at uni, I'm up at 9 working anyway. So in terms of getting a routine, getting up every day, that's been fine. And I've actually found having the job really helpful for that. But kind of like what's been said before, I do find that, say, I'm doing my part-time job in the morning and then I've got my degree in the afternoon, I'm on my laptop all day, and then I'll do some work, like uni work afterwards, and it will end up being about 8 o'clock. And I'm, oh my gosh, I've spent the whole day on my laptop, my eyes hurt, I've had no way, I've had no break, every time just sort of rolls into one because there's nothing, if I was going in person, I'd be getting those breaks and having more natural lull to my day, but it's just I have found that my eyes are oh my god, they're really hurting. It's because I'm looking at my screen all day. So I do agree with that.
You should buy some of these. These are anti-blue light glasses. So I have to wear them now, otherwise I get headaches. I've seen
so many things about those, and I actually think I might have to invest because
they're brilliant. They're brilliant.
Yeah, sounds good. Right, I want to talk a bit about the pros and cons of online teaching, even though we did touch on it just now, because I'm sure viewers they'd be interested to know what are the pros of online learning and what are the cons of it. I'll have an input as well. For me, I think a pro of online teaching is definitely the lecture being recorded and kind of being able to go back to that afterwards in your own time, free time, because I was at Leicester before, and when I was there, usually when the lectures were in person, even though they were meant to be recorded, not every lecture was recorded online, it wasn't as organised. Whereas now, because everything is online, there's kind of a need to make sure that everything is online, obviously, and all the lectures are obviously recorded, so you can go back to it in your free time. That would be a pro for me. But what would you say are your pros and cons of online teaching? Ejem, would you like to start?
Sure. I think so. We'll start with the pros. Start positive. Yeah. I think online learning, as I said before, it's just given me more time to do other things, which is amazing and quite invaluable actually for someone at medical school. Having free time is really rare and really enjoyable when you do have it. So it's lovely. Aside from that, it's encouraging me to be a lot braver technologically. I think before I was always confident with computers, but I kind of said to myself, right, I know what I'm doing. I have one way of doing everything and I'll just do it that way. Whereas now I've had to get used to lots of different platforms, use lots of different programs I've never used before. And I think I've definitely been better for it. It's definitely improved my ability to just kind of find new ways of doing things and better ways, faster ways, safer ways, so files don't get randomly deleted or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's definitely been that aspect of it as well. And lectures have always been recorded for Imperial, so that's never been a problem. But I do like the fact that online you kind of have more freedom about whether or not you get particularly involved in the session. So if you don't really feel like joining a debate on a particular day because the topic isn't interesting to you, or you're just having a bad day, it's very easy to kind of switch off and passively listen and not really force yourself to do much. It can be a pro and it can be a con. I found it to be a pro because I felt like I was putting less pressure on myself to force things that I wasn't interested in. Whereas obviously when you are interested, you have more leeway to really push yourself and say, okay, like I can put my hand up and, on Microsoft Teams, there's that little raise hand button. I'm going to raise my hand and say something every 10 seconds or whatever. So that was a pro. The cons, I mean, as Millie said, my eyes hurt. It's exhausting being on a screen all day long. And often I'm on the screen literally from the minute I wake up, from kind of 9:30 all the way up until 7, 8 p.m. And by the end of it, you just feel like, oh my God, this is exhausting. And you can't do anything without being on the screen anymore, which is the tricky bit. So I tutor as well alongside uni. And when I'm tutoring, it used to be I'd go to someone's house and we're working on paper and it's all very, I'm not looking at a screen at all. Now, obviously, I'm staring at a screen for that entire time, and it adds so much extra.
You know what? I want to add into something that you said there. I think as well as that staring at a screen, it's also kind of demotivating, like you're not being as active. Because I remember like when I was back in Leicester, I used to be in halls, which was about like a 15-20 minute walk away from campus. And it might sound a bit silly for people, but even doing that walk to uni and back afterwards was good exercise, getting some fresh air during the day. But now where that's taken, you're kind of just, stuck at home, sitting in all day. And I find it, I don't know, bit demotivating that way. But no, I do agree with what you said there. Yeah. Would you like to carry on with your point?
Oh yes, I think I completely agree.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's a very valid point, and I completely agree that it's definitely completely changed my ability to get up and walk around during the day, because you can't anymore. When everything you have to do is on a screen, you can't get up and walk around and do it at the same time. Before, it used to be like, okay, well, at least I need to get to places, so there has to be time set aside where I'm going somewhere and I have to be away from my screen. Now there isn't even that, right? So everything you do, whether it's uni work, whether it's other stuff, everything is through a screen. Even socializing with friends is usually through a screen these days. So everything involves just staring at that screen in front of you, and it's exhausting. And on that note, the only other con really that I can think about actually is that it's really damaging to your ability to socialize with other people. So it depends on whether you already know the people there. In my case, everyone on my course was new to me because they kind of shuffled everyone up, and I hadn't happened to meet many people that were on my course with me. So it was very difficult to then actually build up a friendship with anybody, because you just don't know them. And if you don't know them, how can you randomly text them something? Or, you can't really build up a relationship that doesn't exist through an online format. It's very difficult. So that's made it very challenging, just in terms of having a support network on your course, people to ask questions to, people who can give you ideas about your coursework or about how that particular lecturer was, or things like that. So the socialization has definitely been an issue as well. Yeah,
I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But there's a comment from one of our viewers, Jessica Barclay, and she said a con is definitely that there's more procrastinating. What's your views on this, Ollie? Would you like to?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I find myself doing all sorts of things. Even reading, which is, I should be reading for my course, and I find myself reading things that have nothing to do with my course, and I can't really explain that really. But going back to the other advantages, I'll start with the advantages, was the point you made about recording lectures. It was never something I thought about before the pandemic, but I was talking to someone in a breakout room the other day whose first language wasn't English. And she was saying that she goes back and watches the lectures on 0.75 times the speed, just so that she could fully understand English. And that was something I hadn't considered, and I thought that was a real advantage to a lot of people on our course that I hadn't thought about.
That is really interesting, because I wouldn't have thought that, but that is a really valid point, actually.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's something I wouldn't have crossed my mind. Obviously, the English is my first language, so that was interesting. And the other advantage is not that I do this, of course, but if you wanted to, hypothetically, you could roll out of bed 5 minutes before the lectures. Of course, I would never do such a thing. But yeah, the disadvantages are, of course, things like procrastination, and as we mentioned earlier, the debate, the stalling of the debate, and the conversation that we have in lectures has been a big problem.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. And obviously the procrastination, there's a lot of people agreeing with that. There's Sophie Scanlon, who has just commented saying she feels there's a lack of social presence when learning through online platforms. Millie, would you like to have an input as well on this topic?
Yes, I'd say the pros are pretty similar to the other two. It's having it recorded is a massive advantage. It's a really big advantage. At my undergrad, I did an English degree, and they would never, ever, ever record anything, because they thought that it was academic plagiarism. Like we could be copying the lecturer's ideas. So they made a rule that they would never, ever allow that to happen. Sure,
maybe that's the reason why mine, because I did English literature before at Leicester as well, and the lectures weren't really recorded then either.
Oh no, they were so anti it, but I'm sure now they are. And it's been such a huge advantage I've found, being able to have it recorded, even if it's like the lecture we had today. The guy spoke a bit quickly. I know I'm going to have to rewatch that, because I don't think I took everything in. So it's such a huge advantage to be able to go back and do it on demand and go at your own pace rather than the lecturer's pace. So yeah, that's been the biggest pro for me. Then a con, procrastination and distraction. I think if I was in person.
Also the technical side of things as well is also definitely a con.
Yeah. If you're in person, say for example, I wouldn't go on my phone in a lecture in person, because I think it's a bit rude, but at home there's no one watching me, so I do find that I get a bit distracted on my phone, because no one's there to it's just not, it's something that's okay to do when you're just on your own, isn't it? So that's I get a bit distracted. And then tech, I've had quite a few lectures where the Wi-Fi on, maybe not even on my end, but on the lecturer's end has been really bad, and it's been quite off-putting, and then the lecturers get extended because we've not been able to go through the material fast enough. And tech issues is not something you would get in person, but that's a big negative for me, I think.
No, that's great, thank you. There's a question from one of our viewers called Gunay Karaman, and she's asked, people usually complain they don't have much time to do things for themselves. Do you think that students can now use this time at home to actually do something for themselves? I think she's kind of mentioned it in the sense that, mistaken me if I'm wrong, kind of have the time to, I don't know, maybe get work experience online, or maybe, keep more active at home. What's your views on that? Ejem, would you like to go first?
I think it's definitely easier, as I said before, because you're not traveling around. That takes a lot of time out of your day, for me anyway, as someone who was in London. But I think even if you weren't traveling around much, being online does have the benefit of cutting out a lot of in-between times. Normally you need to leave 10 minutes between a meeting or things like that. Now, if you wanted to, if you felt like you could, you could do everything back to back, and it would be very simple and very easy. But I think it's a kind of two-way street where, yes, you do have more time, but as we've already mentioned, you are usually so exhausted from staring at a screen that it can really drain you. So it depends on what it is that you want to do for yourself. So if, like me, your goal is something like, let's get more active, let's exercise more, I have much more time to do that, and it's been really productive for me in that sense. But if your goal is also another goal I had, which is let's get ready for, a completely separate exam, or let's write new papers or do something else work-wise that's going to get me ahead, it becomes nearly impossible, because you're so sick of staring at a screen that you can't push yourself even more to do more than, what you need to do. Yeah. So in that sense, I think it does depend on what it is you're actually wanting to do for yourself. And
That's great. I'm a bit conscious of time, so there's a few kind of topics that I do want to touch on. So I'm going to ask the next question, and this one's to do with protests and petitions. Obviously, there was a lot of talk this year about students protesting, and also there were petitions that were shared to reduce tuition fees. What are your views on this, Ollie? Would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I think I was thinking the other day about something that my lecturer said to me in second year when I was sick and couldn't make it in. He said, "Well, you're expected to make it, and we're not going to give you the material online. We're not going to record this because it's really important that you turn up in person." But now it's you have to do everything online, and we're not reducing the fees. We're not lowering grade boundaries or anything like that. So there's been that sort of change that's been enforced. So I'm very sympathetic to university students, of which I am one. So I guess I'm sympathetic to myself. I do think that the quality has not been the same, and if the quality isn't the same, then the price shouldn't be the same. That's my view of it. That
is a fair enough point. Obviously, there was also, I had a discussion with one of my friends as well, and we were saying how there was all petitions about reducing tuition fees, but I also think it's important to think of accommodation as well, like during the pandemic, because there's so many students that are paying like full price, for their student accommodation, but they're not currently there at the moment. I can give myself as an example. I'm paying full tuition fees because I'm in private halls, but I've not actually been there since November. So I don't know. I do think petitions should possibly start in terms of accommodation. But what are your views on this, Millie? Would you like to say something?
Mm-hmm. I think the accommodation thing. I mean, obviously, like I've said, I'm from here, so it's accommodation. Yeah. So I can't I don't have any personal experiences like you have, but the thought that you are paying for somewhere else that you haven't been able to go into for 4 months is, I think, completely unfair. Completely unfair. It's not out of choice that you're not coming back. Like, you're not allowed to come back. I know that quite a few people have been getting I don't know if it's full amount of their rent back or half of their rent back or something like that. And I was having a conversation with someone, and we were talking about if fees should be reduced, like tuition fees. And their point is that people who should be in accommodation have been able to get some money off because they haven't been able to use their accommodation, the campus, like they expected to. And so by that logic, we maybe should get some money off our tuition because we're not able to use the campus like we signed up to as well. The library, the sports facilities, just in general, the campus. I mean, I've probably been on it about 15 times since the year began. So that isn't, I'm not really getting a good use of it in the way that, I expected to be.
Yeah, in person. No, I definitely agree with you there. Such as going to the library, that's such a major part of being able to go to university, Yeah. There's a comment from one of our viewers, Mark Palmer, who has stated tuition fees and accommodation fees should be frozen. Ejim, would you like to say something about it?
Yeah, sure. It's a really tricky question. I think the reason it's tricky is because there's kind of two approaches to it. And I think universities could either say, right, we're going to reduce your tuition fees and then don't blame us for any difference in your content quality or whatever, because we've cut the price and it is what it is, so deal with it. Or they could say, we're not cutting the price, but we are offering blah, blah, blah resources or blah, blah, blah new kind of system, program, whatever it is, that's going to help you deal with the current situation. So I think Imperial very much went for the second option, where they were very, very outright from the start saying, we're not going to give you any discounts in tuition fees or give any money back or anything like that. But they've been very accommodating in terms of providing us with, they already do anyway, so all of the programs that we need for our courses are usually provided for us anyway. So in terms of moving to an online format, they were right in arguing that there was no difference in us. We didn't have to pay for anything that we wouldn't normally use, or we didn't have to use any kind of technology that we weren't familiar with. So in that sense, everything was the same. The library, I agree, we couldn't use, and that was a problem. But they set up a system where we could request any books from the library to be scanned and emailed to us. So that massively helped. And a lot of books are already available in online format from the university. So they actually already had a lot of systems set up that we could use. They extended the borrowing time on books and things like that. So although, yes, the actual workspace itself of the library or the campus in any way has been sort of removed from the equation, they were very good at compensating for that in one way or another, I think, in the majority of circumstances. And as I mentioned, for students who need labs to perform experiments and things, they've been open this whole time. So they've been allowed to go to labs whenever they need to. In that sense, so I think it can be fair that tuition fees have not been reduced. It can be, depending on the situation. Accommodation fees, I think, is pretty much if you're not there, why should you be paying, right? So that kind of makes sense. But it's very dependent, again, on the situation, because if it's a university that you're getting accommodation from, like Imperial's own accommodation, then Imperial can and have actually said, if you're not there, we're not going to make you pay. And that's fine. That's at their discretion. But obviously, if you're staying somewhere private, like I would be if I were there, renting somewhere from someone completely separate from university, you can't then expect them to really do much about that situation. They can if they want to, I suppose, but I don't think it would be fair to say that there's some kind of legal mandate that they now can't charge you if you're not there, because it would be very difficult to prove who's there when and how everything's being used anyway. So it would open up a lot of debate. I think it makes a lot more sense to kind of say, unfortunately, it is the circumstance. Everyone's in the same boat at least, so at least that makes it a little bit better. Yeah. But it's tricky, isn't it? Because no matter which way you go, someone's going to be damaged from it. So it's difficult.
No, it is. No, that is true. There's a question from one of our viewers as well, Zeliha Yalchin. She stated, do you find it hard to keep up with all the work that's been set, like deadlines and obviously any kind of presentations and stuff? Obviously, where everything is now online and we're home, people might be thinking, oh, they've probably got all the time, during the day to keep up with all their work. But what's your views on this? Kind of interesting. Millie, would you like to go first? We'll go to Ollie next.
So far, everything I've been able to kind of keep on top of it, but I do think that is partly because, like, the routine we talked about earlier, like, I think if I didn't have that structure of being up at 9 every day, then I think I would find it harder. But I am in a bit of a routine that I'm up at 9 and then, I don't know when I go to bed, but like I'm up to use the day. So far I haven't actually found it that bad, and I haven't really noticed that much of a difference in terms of like workload or anything from it being in person to being online. So far, personally, I obviously it goes in swings and roundabouts a bit, but so far on the whole, I think I've been able to keep up with everything pretty well.
Perfect, thank you. Ollie, would you like to say something?
Yeah, again, I can't say that of all the issues I've had from online learning, that hasn't been one of them, meeting deadlines. So I'd agree with Millie on that point. Even though I am distracted quite easily all the time, I still am sitting at my laptop for 10, 11 hours a day sometimes. So even though I'm distracted, it is still 10, 11 hours of work.
Yeah, no, perfect. There's a really good question from one of our viewers, Amy Barker, who has asked, do you personally think that your university has dealt with the transition to online learning well? Which is an interesting question. Ollie, would you like to start with that one?
So I mean, in this pandemic, I've been at 2 universities, my undergraduate one, which was in Brighton, and my postgraduate one here. And there's been a real difference between the 2 institutions. I think in fairness, you do have to say that the one I was at when the pandemic was first starting, they obviously didn't have much time to sort of get things up and running in preparation for that, whilst Loughborough did. Well, my experience when I came to Loughborough in September, they did. But the difference I've noticed has been between the 2 has been quite stark. Loughborough have been quite organised and prepared and really thought things through, whilst my other university was not the case. They were very timetables, all the technology didn't work and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that's a reflection of the university or if it's a reflection of just the time that they were rushed into that change.
Perfect. There's also another question from one of our viewers called Aisha Ishiri, and she's asked, would you rather continue your studies online next year too? Ejim, would you like to answer that?
Yes, I would. I would like to, in sense of it's been so comfortable, like especially over winter where it's been so cold and you don't have to go anywhere. It's just so much easier, right, in that sense. So yes, I would. But I can't because I'm a medical student. So how can I learn how to work with patients if I'm not with patients? So in that sense, no, I don't want to. I want to be in hospitals. I want to be getting better at what I've signed up to do, right? And I want to learn how to be a doctor, which involves doing what doctors are doing right now, every day during the pandemic, which is being there and dealing with the crisis head on. So yeah, I do want to be in hospitals. I do want to experience it, and I want to be back where I belong, kind of thing. You know, I've spent years just waiting to be in hospitals.
I want to ask you as well. Obviously, you're currently in your 4th year, so you're not actually going into university at the moment because it's like the philosophy kind of learning or the theories kind of thing this year. But do you have any friends or know anyone that is going in at the moment to university, like any medic students? Like, how are they?
Yes, I do.
You know, how they are getting on? Like, are they finding the experience similar or the same?
I think they're finding it a little bit harder to get the attention of doctors and get the teaching that they want. Obviously, everyone's very busy. So in that sense, it's very, very difficult. Aside from that, not much has really changed. Hospitals have always been really hectic. So yes, they have obviously been getting more hectic, but COVID in hospital, you're talking intensive care unit. That's really where it is. So you're not going to be seeing COVID in like a kind of really dangerous life or death situation on any other ward. You're not going to be going up to gastroenterology and dealing with it there. It's not really what comes up. So in that sense, I think the teaching's been mostly the same where they can be on the wards and can be with doctors. The problem is getting there and having doctors available who have the time to teach you. And obviously everyone's really stressed out and just generally busy, right? So even when they do have time, they don't feel like they want to spend ages explaining every detail to you. So it's probably been a bit more self-directed than it was before. Not massively, because it already was very much like that, but it's definitely swayed it more in that direction. Yeah.
There's a statement from one of our viewers, Megan Young, and she said, I think we have to bear in mind that although this is a massive change for all us university students, it's also a change for professors as well. So I think if we contribute more by putting our cameras on and contributing to lectures and class discussions, it would make the whole learning experience more enjoyable for everyone. And it would be more enthusiastic. So perhaps the question we could ask here is, do you think it should be compulsory for students online to put their cameras on? Millie, would you like to answer that?
As someone that's guilty of not putting the camera on.
Don't worry, I'll join you on that one.
To be honest, I actually wouldn't mind if we had to put our cameras on. Like, I know that would definitely make me more accountable to contribute. I know it would. So yeah, if it was like a thing that everybody had to do, I wouldn't hate it. But kind of like, well, I can't remember which one of you said it before, but if you're the only person with your camera on and everyone else isn't, you kind of stick out like a sore thumb a bit. Like, so to be honest, if everybody did it or nobody did it, I think that's a bit better than just having the one odd face that you see alongside the lecturer, to be honest. No,
I do agree with you there. I'm a bit conscious of time, and there's 2 other topics that I do really want to touch on, so I'm gonna ask them. First one is the social side of university. Obviously, the reduction in social activities such as going out for dinner, drinks, clubbing, cinema, the usual that you would probably have done, if there was no lockdown restrictions. Do you think that it has impacted your work, or do you feel that you are missing out on your university experience because of it? I think, like, especially with freshers first years, we've got to bear them in mind. They're probably not having the same experience that they would have had, if they were able to be going out and stuff. But Ollie, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got it right. With my sympathy is more towards freshers. I mean, I'm a postgraduate. I don't think your main reason to go into university in the first instance might be for the experience, but when it comes to postgraduate, it's much more sort of about your career and that sort of thing. So in terms of the experience as a whole, I don't feel that sorry for myself, but I do feel a bit sorry for first years just going to university now. In terms of the social life affecting me more generally, it's been a bit odd. So I moved to Loughborough, as I said, from a different university, and I've managed to make friends with people I live in who live with in a private halls, and they're really nice people. So I mean, I've got on well with them. There's 6 of them in total. So I do have friends I've made in Loughborough, as well as people like you guys who I've met online.
We was meant to actually, meet in person, but we never really had the chance.
Yeah. I think we arranged like a course drinks just before we put into tier 4. So so that was badly timed. So that's a bit of a shame, but because my understanding of Loughborough is because it's quite a small university in terms of it's quite a nuclear campus. Most people seem to know each other, which is something I've really noticed that was very different from my old university. And so everyone seems to have stories from maybe the same night out, even though they weren't together, but there's the same event or something like that. And everyone seems to know each other. And so sometimes when my friends are talking about nights out in Loughborough they had before lockdown, I feel a bit sort of left out, that I can't go to the union, that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a pain, but it's the situation we're in. So.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you very much for that. Also, another question that I do kind of want to ask is, do you think it's harder to build friendships because of remote learning? I think there was a module, I think Ollie and Millie, you was probably in it. There was sort of a task that was set where we had to create surveys. And I think one of the students, she was kind of struggling to find, people to fill out her surveys. And I remember I put in the chat, I was like, oh, if you want me to fill out your survey, please send it over. And I think from that, like kind of not a discussion, but people got involved and, started speaking to each other kind of thing. And I feel like it's important for students to kind of, not be shy to ask a question to someone online or like to make discussion with someone, because everyone's in the same boat. But do you think it's harder to build friendships online? Millie, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. I think, I'd say I'm a pretty sociable person, but in terms of like friends that I've made from this course, I can probably like count them on my hand. there's not that many, because there's no opportunities to, like, there's no, like, you and I, for example, Helen, we met when we were in person.
We was lucky, yeah.
And say that hadn't have happened, I would have never met you because it was just online, and it's just like you're just a name in a lecture. So I do think it's so. I think it's a lot harder being online. And I know my younger sister's first year. She's just started in Nottingham, and I know she has really struggled to make friends. And half of it's because it's online, half of it's because there's no sports teams you can socialise with, and pretty much the only friends you can kind of make as a first year, from like sort of their perspective, are the people that you get put in halls with. And if you don't get along with them, then you're kind of stuck with them really at the moment, because there's no opportunity to bump into people at classes or do you want to go for like a coffee after a lecture. That you don't get that. So I think it's a lot harder online to make friends.
No, that's really nice. Thank you. I've just received a warning that we have 10 minutes left. But Ejim, if I can get a short input from you on this topic as well, because there's one other topic that I do really want to talk before we finish. So if you can give me something short.
Really short. I'll be really concise. Essentially, I think I can't imagine being a first year. It would have been impossible. Very truly, honestly, I think I would have really struggled. I don't know how I would have made friends. And the friends that I did make in first year was entirely by who I happened to bump into. So the fact that I wouldn't have that opportunity if I was a first year is dramatically changing the situation. As someone who's not in first year anymore, the fact that we did have smaller groups in our online sessions, so we had big lectures and we also had small tutor groups, and everyone in the tutor group was also part of a big lecture because it was just kind of breakout room style. So that made it really easy because you're in a small group with people, there's no lecturer there, and you're kind of left to get on with the task. And actually over time, you end up you constantly have something to talk about, so it's never awkward because you're doing a task. And over time, you all kind of bring in your own life experiences or your own, whatever it is, your own opinions about things, your own personalities kind of shine through, and then you can become really good friends. So I was really lucky. I ended up being really good friends with everybody that was in my small group. probably wouldn't happen with everyone. So I think it's so random, really. It's not fair. It just depends on what happens to be dealt to you, to be honest.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. The last kind of topic that I do want to talk about is something I feel a bit passionate about, but it's graduation ceremonies. Ejem, you're obviously in your 4th year. I know that your course is 6 years long, so long course. But obviously with Ollie, Millie, obviously last year we all graduated from our undergraduate degrees, but ceremonies were cancelled because of obviously lockdown restrictions and pandemic. How do you guys feel about possibly having a virtual graduation this year due to current circumstances? I think, like with me, I remember last year, you know, when the ceremonies did get cancelled, I was really, really upset by it, because I just think it's such an important part of your university experience to have in person, you know, and it's just a little bit underwhelming. You know, we all graduated, even though we've all received our certificates, we wasn't actually able to have the ceremony and like take the pictures, wear the cap. But how do you guys feel about having a virtual graduation? And would you rather universities organise something online this year if we can't obviously have ceremonies, or would you rather wait to have it in person? Ollie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the toughest things in that sense of missing out on the graduation. I mean, my grandparents have all of my cousins' graduation pictures on the wall. I'm the youngest, and you know, not be there, it was a bit annoying last year. Actually, my virtual graduation from my undergrad was actually last week. I didn't go because I just really didn't see the purpose of, you know, having a Facebook Live graduation. It really didn't appeal to me. So I would love to actually have a graduation in person. If I have to wait a year for it, then I'm happy to wait a year for it. Obviously, it's not my decision, and it's not the university's fault either. But yeah, I'd like that picture.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there, 100%. Millie, would you like to say something as well?
Yeah, so my undergrad I did in Scotland. I went to St Andrews Uni, and the uni is there's lots of like tradition, and like the graduation ceremony is a huge thing. You have to wear like these fur. In Scotland, it's a 4-year degree as well, so it's a long time coming. So, and you have to wear all these like fur things on your cape, and then you have to kneel. It's kind of like you're getting knighted. You like kneel down, and they like put your hand on your head and all that. It's really OTT. So that just doesn't translate to online at all. And St Andrews tried to, they did sort of like a little online ceremony for us. And to be honest, it was nice. It was about 40 minutes long, but it just isn't the same. Like it really just isn't the same. And kind of like Ollie, like I was there watching it, and I was like, well, to be honest, this is more for my parents than for me, because I'd just rather wait to do it. Yeah. Than do a half job of it. So yeah, I'd rather just wait and have it.
No, I definitely agree with you there. You know, with me, when the ceremonies got cancelled last year, Leicester Uni, they gave us the option to attend the ceremony in January this year or in July, and I picked January, but then obviously it got cancelled again because of the restrictions and stuff. And there's not been much on whether there will be one, you know, later on this year or not. And I think universities, you know, should make sure that they do provide it, because I do think that university students are passionate about, you know, having their graduation ceremonies. But there's one question from our viewers that I'm going to ask, and I think that will be our time up after that. Aisha Ishiri, she has asked, one of the requirements for an applied job is that you're able to work in a team. Do you think your current learning experience equips you for it? Ejem, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I think it's not all that applicable to medicine, to be absolutely honest with you, because obviously, with the exception of the year that I'm in, every other year of medical students are at university. They're in hospitals, they're doing what they should be doing. So has it affected them? I would say no. And actually, you're screened for team working before you even join medicine at all as an undergraduate. So it doesn't really apply to jobs as a doctor, to be honest with you. They don't check that later down the line. It's kind of just assumed that you've already been checked for that and it's all fine. So
yeah,
it's not really a massive issue for medicine. I can't really comment on it that much.
Okay. Would you like to say something about the graduation ceremonies? Like any views on that?
Well, I mean, I'm meant to have a graduation this year, so you kind of have two graduations from my medical degree, because this year I'm finishing the Bachelor of Science component, and then in 2 years' time I finish the medicine component. So it's kind of split in two. But this year's one is smaller than the big one, obviously, because it's kind of you're 4 years in, you finished your Bachelor of Science, and it's great, and everyone loves it, but it's not the one you're really waiting for, because you're really waiting for the day that you can be called doctor, right? Which is in 2 years' time. So no one's kind of dying out of excitement for this year's. But that said, I still would like it to be in person. And if it's not in person, I would prefer to wait and do it in person, because I think it's just not the same for your family, for you, for anyone. The kind of atmosphere isn't there if you do it online. And I really feel for everyone who's missed on their graduation. It's genuinely very sad. So it's not the best.
No, I definitely agree with you there, and I hope that class of 2020 graduates will get their in-person ceremony soon. Let's hope. But yes, I think that's our time up. It's our time up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, our dear viewers, and watching us. Hope that you all enjoyed it. And I'm also really happy. Thank you so much for accepting to join and have this discussion tonight. When I called you all, you literally all were like, yep, I'll join. And I was like, perfect. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.